Keanu Reeves had always believed that fate had a way of bringing people together when they needed each other the most. He never expected that one evening, while walking through the dimly lit streets of Los Angeles, he would come face to face with a ghost from his past, a friend he had not seen in decades, now reduced to living on the streets. As he stepped out of his car near a small cafe, Keanu noticed a hunched figure sitting on the sidewalk, wrapped in a tattered blanket. Something about the way the man held himself, the curve of his shoulders, and the way he absent-mindedly traced patterns on the ground struck a chord in Keanu's memory. As he got closer, the man's face was partially obscured by unkempt hair and a thick beard, but there was something hauntingly familiar about him. Keanu's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched down. "Excuse me," he said gently. The man looked up, his deep-set eyes reflecting years of hardship and sorrow. And then it hit him. "Chris," Keanu whispered, his voice barely audible. The man blinked several times as if trying to clear his vision. "Keanu?" he croaked, his voice hoarse and unsteady. Keanu felt a lump in his throat. Chris was his best friend from childhood, a boy who had once shared his dreams, his laughter, and his fears. They had been inseparable, but life had pulled them in different directions. Keanu had chased his dreams in Hollywood, while Chris had been left behind, his path veering into unknown darkness. Seeing his old friend like this shattered something inside him. Keanu immediately took off his jacket and draped it over Chris's shoulders. "Come on, let's get you somewhere warm," he said, helping him up. They went to a nearby diner where Keanu ordered 2 hot meals. As Chris ate ravenously, Keanu sat in silence, allowing his friend the dignity of regaining some strength before asking questions. When Chris finally spoke, his words were slow and measured. He told Keanu about his life, how he had lost his job after a series of unfortunate events, how depression had crept in, how he had been unable to recover from the blows life had thrown his way. He had no family left, no one to turn to, and eventually, the streets had become his home. Keanu listened intently, his heart breaking with every word. "You don't have to do this alone anymore, Chris," he said firmly. "I'm here now." That night, Keanu took Chris to a hotel, making sure he had a warm bed and clean clothes. But Keanu knew this wasn't enough. He wasn't going to be just a fleeting act of kindness in his friend's life. He was going to make sure Chris got back on his feet. In the weeks that followed, Keanu helped Chris get medical attention, therapy, and a fresh start. He paid for an apartment, helped him find a job, and most importantly, reminded him of his worth. Chris, once a broken man, slowly found his way back to himself. He started smiling again, laughing again, and even dreaming again. Months passed, and one evening, as they sat on Chris's small but cozy balcony, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance, Chris turned to Keanu. "I don't know how to thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved me." Keanu smiled. That's what friends do. Their bond, once lost to time, had been restored by kindness, resilience, and the unbreakable power of friendship. And as Keanu looked at his friend, no longer a shadow of his former self, but a man with hope in his eyes, he knew that fate had indeed brought them back together for a reason. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of times, a single act of kindness could change everything. But their journey was far from over. Chris still had wounds that needed healing, and Keanu was determined to see him through to a full recovery. He invited Chris to join him on a film set, giving him an inside look at the world Keanu had built for himself. Chris watched in awe as his friend moved effortlessly through the bustling set, and for the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose. With Keanu's encouragement, Chris began working behind the scenes, learning everything he could about filmmaking. He started taking small jobs, first as a production assistant, then as a lighting technician. It was grueling work, but it gave him something he had lost long ago, a sense of direction. Keanu continued to check in on Chris every day, supporting him in any way he could. He introduced him to colleagues, helped him build a resume, and even sat with him through therapy sessions when the weight of his past became too much to bear. As the months turned into a year, Chris's transformation was undeniable. He had regained his confidence, his strength, and most importantly, his belief in himself. Keanu knew his friend was ready to stand on his own again, but he also knew their friendship had been forever changed. They were no longer just childhood friends. They were brothers, bound by a connection that had been tested and strengthened by adversity. One evening, as they sat in Keanu's backyard, Chris turned to him with a smile. "You know, I used to think my story was over, that I had lost everything. But you showed me that even the darkest nights can lead to the brightest mornings." Keanu placed a hand on Chris's shoulder. "That's because life isn't about how many times we fall. It's about how many times we get back up." Chris nodded, his eyes shining with gratitude. He had been given a second chance, and he wasn't going to waste it. As the stars twinkled above them, Keanu and Chris sat in comfortable silence, knowing that no matter where life took them next, they would always have each other. Their journey had been long and difficult, but in the end, it had led them both to something truly priceless. A friendship that had stood the test of time and emerged stronger than ever. And that, Keanu thought to himself, was the real meaning of fate.